Alright, that you know, and Samalia, and the Teshitele, Shuyajita.
Well, let's first just say good morning and welcome. It's good to meet you all today.
And the ring of the Yanjik, the Negi and Jimmy, that is Gasore, Gonsen, Dushin, Gablia, and then Charles Ya, some Duje, and Jingazuki, me, Jishia, the Charles and Hansu, Yanshia, Gohabradi, and Chikans Ma, Share, Ravadi, Bemasi, Gavuta, and the Gauchon songs.
And it's, with sincerity, I can say it delights me to see so many people having chosen to use your holiday time to come and gather here, to receive teachings, and to meditate on these teachings. So to have taken this opportunity to really make an impact on your life, this really brings great joy to me.
And go up Yene, the go up Lenche, Ducini, Bishop Diale, Chicken, and the Tingy Mongosum, Kaleka, the Dream, John Ducine, and some do Jera, the Bemasigi, Chicago Shores.
Because to have such an opportunity to gather and hear teachings and to meditate on them is really difficult to get all the courses that are required for such an event to be offered, as well as for you individually. For all those courses to have come together, this is very rare. And yet they have come together and you have taken this opportunity.
And the ring in my on the Ringlia Karachuya Lamna, that Yarum Chigi, Kutin, Niba, Jawakin, Jesus Sonsheviki, Dangazuya. And Lomazuki and Koronga Lomazu, Koronia, and the Karshuva Lamna, and the Mazuda, Nimechik and Shiruguri, and the Chishidu, Machinelia, and the Maoban, Yaman, Yawayahuayada, Yahuaya, Dandalia, Jerikche, the Canesio, the Nation, the Damashina Roches, and Yashuja, and the Yawakin Yasuki, and the Lomazalia, and Jik, all those Diritus, Chigores, Picator, Chivar, and Jerik Yamlin, Damasia. Our
time here is going to be spent looking at the answer that the second Dalai Lama, Gendün Gyatso, gave to a student of his who, with sincerity, requested instructions, advice, guidance on how to live a life well, a life meaningfully, so as to prepare for one's inevitable death. So in the colophon, it lays out how the request was made and who made it. But we are going to now look at the answer that the second Dalai Lama, Gendün Gyatso, gave to his student.
And she says, Damgas or that she says, Majuna to Labjasi or do Suchiore, such a man Labjanaya, then Yamlin do somebody in his tongue, as Yamlin do Shiore, a Labjetis.
These spiritual instructions or advice is what we're going to look at. So this was advice that the Dalai Lama gave to his students, how to utilize his life well.
Caracterization, then also such a Shandachilia, Lumba Shandachil, Purovena, then also Lumba Pacho de Troela, Lamgala, Ganga Mateagi, Tolia, Ganga Sea, Ganga Mayagi, Dondala Caracterici Ores, Terric Carciores, that chicken, Terricia Yorvada, chicken, Chicaro, Namdu, Tenua, and Jala. The penny such Lumba della, penny less Havana. Penniless and Dakanga Mate, Donala Karakaku, Sajing, Dachikala, Saya, Jalana, Karakukuna, Chasangazuki, Terici, Tambon, Maronelia, Troya, Comazonelia to give and Terici, Goetic Chasan, Terici, water, Terici, Sarjan, Terici Sarsona, then by Droya Kotus, drawing at Ganga Tioma, John Penny Levine, Ganga Dizili to go Marwakasane. The Ganga Mategi, Lamgala Ganga Matea, Penny such the less and the Ganga Mategi, Karkar Kugu, Chasan Twin Digan, the Dirichi Sawanza, and Ganga Tigo Marwa. That Gaya Diri Mari Machebaje, Chik Drogo in Bachitla, the Drohegi Dondala Dirian Kaya Macheba. lamgala kanga gargar kugu me dihan deri majeba phani le sabane gargar kugu be deri majeba ina ta deri majeba jo hop de gala ya ro chena de lamgala ya chikanga mangbo ade digo re chik na khona digo re sa kanga ani phani le sabane ani 튕게 gargar kugu be dige kanga mangbo chili go wa da dinga zo da ngosum de 통셔 차 되로 와
The request was for instructions on how to prepare for the time of death, and that is what His Holiness gave to his students. And preparation for any event is crucial. We know this from our daily life. When you can take it as an analogy, if one is going to embark on a journey, one will prepare before one travels. The first thing one will do is think, so what am I likely to encounter both on my journey and when I arrive at my destination? What obstacles, what difficulties am I likely to encounter? Because through this process of preparation, when we identify what we are likely to encounter, we can prepare well. And having prepared well, when we embark on this journey, we will not encounter any problems or difficulties because we are prepared well. And moreover, throughout the journey, as well as when we arrive at our destination, we will not encounter any unexpected or unwanted surprises, all because we have prepared well.
Droya Droya Dusulidi and Semia Gangasio Matrosho to some relation to Shogoro, Gangaskayo Marwa. That Didiga, Meva Hoptical Drogo, Odanga Drogore, that Jikala Lamga Cargo, Ganganti, Penil and the Carjigas and Biggest, that's Didi Mena and the Semlia and Gangasligorua.
Also, we will know from our own lives that if one is embarking on something that's new and challenging, if we are prepared well, we will look forward to the challenge because we know we're ready. We're ready to achieve what we've setting out to achieve. On the other hand, though, we also know from our life's experience, if we are unprepared and we have to embark on something that's challenging for us, we're going to be stressed. We're going to be anxious. And the difference comes down to whether we've prepared well or not.
What I've
said here, I think, matches well with many experiences that you would have already had in your life.
Kaba Mongojura and Jiggy Lamada did a Mongo Junior Dina, Dadabardo, Chichasan, she Sarmada, Dambo Dijuna, Dadabardo Mishiva de Lado, years the Chiel Higher Maris. It's not Dinas and House in a Yimichik Pashiru, Regere. Chisnada, Tashi Robana, Kahodu, Jewa Chimagic, the Lea, Mebanana, Shina, Kokaskayo Maro. It's not Mebachayo, Marakewa Chimaji Lengu, Reskewachi Lengu, Regere. It's the Lengo is on that. Jewa Mahon Bade Yabu Yaki, Diki Yada, Dunga Mayada, Diki Yaki, Tablamla, Sedelangas, that the Terisha Hores. Tanga the Shiruji de Cablia and Semlia Ganga Matiabata, the Nigim, Mayandela, and the Sedelia, Terisha Hores. Chisandi, Terisha Hadi, Jewa Chima Doyaki, Jewa Chimala, Diki Mayada, Jewa Gasa, Dunga Mayada, Jewa Chimala, Diki Yaki, and the Tablam ki. Tablam Terichi had Gudi Masona, that and answer Saja Terichi Hores, that is one of the that Lamden didn't quarter.
The ending of this life is certain. We know this from what we have observed in our own life. Many people, either that we know well or famous people in the world, they have died. And if we look back over the expanse of history, all the famous people we read about in books, we can only know them through books. They've all died. And even great spiritual practitioners, the great lamas of the past, they've all passed from this life. None remain. So our death is certain. Recognizing this, recognizing that the day will definitely come when everyone, everything, and I will all be gone, will turn our mind to the inevitability of this event and the need to prepare well. Knowing that if we do prepare well, not only will we live this life well, what remains of this life well, but being well prepared when death comes, we will experience no fear, not even concern, because we know we have prepared well. We've prepared well in that our next life will go well. We will have no concerns about our future life because we have lived this life well.
제가 나중에 제대로야 나중에 직되게 직 냠len지가 소 대리체에 가라가라 대리체에 당한서 삼로다야 되는 맞아 대리체에서 당한서 잘라로 대리체다 직 유변주 대리체에 디체줘요 말아 디 대체에 판도요 말 당한서 가라서는 개와 세면나로 삼로나로야 삼로다지 삼로나로 삼로 정보 삼로 야가 되게 파 삼다 검시태지 써야들이 검시 써야들이 니 대리리 진짜 니 대리체야.
So how does one prepare? So in brief, there is no shopping list that one needs to follow. There's nothing that needs to be bought. One's preparation is entirely mental. One needs to strengthen particular virtuous habits, habitual ways of thinking, and weaken harmful ways of thinking. This is it. That in its essence is our preparation. It's transforming our mind.
제가 당한 주게 점리 나래야 미끼라 첨부 규첨부 시우라 시어래 안 지게 안 지미 빼지 교보다 지게 가 없으면 교보라 시어래 이내 니니가 나주게 선비 내가 블러드스 캐버려 요때 시로도 갑라 가고 캐메 버지고 지게래 안에 소소수 부디에 왕치 요래 본부에서 유튜브에서 대 수부 캐줘야다 지 가고 캐요 말에 아니 교보이네 가고 캐요 말다 니가 게 시도도 갑라 가야 캐메 버지바래 규절하다 되니 소소수 부디에 캐메 거 지바 차로 다 이내 가르쳐 요래람나 소수게 삼로 나래야 마시 가서 선비링들이야 삼로 상비처 계위처도 같이 삼다데 예배네 니게와디 차상 캐줘요래 and diba gazin diba de kero just gewa de diba ni di ngazo sem ni den do yor chesa ngazo sem di shi do de ngazo subu di gewa chima de kero ya ma ko subu de me ba cha do go ga ru go so ngazo sem di ani gewa chima do go re chesa sem ba ya ho chi yo ba na ani de gewa chima ma do go re ngam ba chi na di ya chima do go chesa de ne za ngazo sem me sa ba gewi ri di ga je de chi to ne de di ma ngazo shi du ka lo kero ya de di yor re so
Throughout our world, amongst the many billions of people, there's great disparity between the material conditions that people live in, as well as the material possessions that people have. And therefore we see great variety in how people live their lives. But at the time of death, no matter what wealth they have amassed or what poverty they die in, all of that remains. None of that can be taken to the next life. So no matter how much material wealth and security one has acquired or has not acquired, it's all left behind. Nothing is taken to one's next life. So all beings are the same in this regard, in being unable to take any material possessions, no matter how hard they strive for, no matter how they dominated their minds to acquire these, they're all left behind. But the other way that beings are also all the same is that not only are they the same in what they have to leave behind, they are the same in what they do take to their next lives. And this is because, for all of us, what goes from life to life is our mind. And on our mind are our virtuous habitual imprints and our non-virtuous habitual imprints. So all the wholesome and unwholesome karma that we individually have created, this we take with us to our next life. And this is the same for all beings, whether those few who are counted amongst the great and the good, or the mass of beings, we are all the same in this regard too. our virtuous and our non-virtuous karma. That and that alone is what accompanies us to our next life.
nang sem le tene dunga chungwa chida anchi gi da chayen le tene dunga ya ni hungore da digi du dunga de se che digi du da de nang sem le tene digi du da chida chi ane twingi gi thone digi du da ni hungore ndingi gi nane zo de nga nang sem gi tene digi du da le sem gi tene dunga ya da ni di nubal ma sone sha chaware.
For all beings, the unwanted circumstances that we encounter, whether it's a slight frustration or deep pain and misery, whatever the magnitude, comes from one of two directions. Either its initial source is the outer material world, or secondly, it's our inner mental world. And similarly, they have their corresponding solutions. Suffering that arises from the outer material world has solutions to be found in the outer material world. And suffering that arises from the inner mental world, this has as its solution techniques that are found within our inner mental world. And amongst these two, the solutions that are found in the outer material world and those that are found through our ways of thinking, our inner mental world, it is the latter, our ways of thinking, that is by far much more powerful.
차바라샤 남시 정말 휴슈나 대려 제모제 그 되바 슉셔모 휴슈엔 디기네 제모라 제하도 갑려야 수불야 강아지 캬고 얼때네 디 셈기 대려 제모제기 눈바디기 슈긴기 바직 류기 캬바도 바 냄샤지 제가 캬바 초고 마든 제모 슈지고로 와 되게 두보거래 이나 당 아주기 제자 아주 류기 둥아디 semgi digi shubana semgi digi thone wanggur cheje na lugi dunga de chungchung se tu gore dangan zo yang je sem ya jiwu yune mebe na ganga shiu shubana lulia digi ben lulia du lo ya ko ya kala sa ya ko se ya de sa ya ko shu ji be jiwu shu ju be ne ya lulia digi ju ya ge tinggen yue de be ne ya lulia na za me ba che digi yue de be ne 이내 셈이 강아 축치무여서 디기 류기 디기 셈이 동아드마 님 두고 말해. 제가 되는자 셈기 디기 디베 축체 시체당 뉴베체와래. 제가 류기 디기도 숙충와래. 제가 되는자 류기 셈기 디기 내가 저 류기 강아이네 마님 두야다. 류기 디기에네 셈기 강아이네 디기마 디기데 매바서 뉴벌 마자 좀야다 되는 거. 제가 되는자 류다 셈기 디베 시 It's
important to be very clear on the primacy of mind in being in terms of both where the suffering we experience is greater, as well as the strength of the mind in being able to overcome problems and difficulties, because our society is largely focused on the outer material world, on achieving happiness through the outer material world, overcoming problems through using material means. But these are weak, especially when compared to the mind. So to give some illustrations to make this point very clear, when the weather is really cold, it may be raining, it may even be snowing, but if you really want to engage in a particular sport or activity, despite the weather, you'll go out there and run or engage in whatever activities you like. And you'll do it quite cold. Your body will be in suffering. But your mind will be joyous because you're doing what you had your heart set on doing. So here, this very simple illustration, we see how the mind is able to easily reduce physical suffering. That level of cold, if one was perhaps sitting indoors, one would find intolerable and immediately put on more clothing or turn up the heating. But now you're doing something you enjoy, so your mind is joyous. That suffering is reduced. But on the other hand then too, if we have ideal material conditions, we are healthy, we are surrounded by friends and loved ones, people who care for us deeply, we can still, despite these ideal conditions, be deeply unhappy inside and not be able to feel impacted or affected by the warmth of those around one, take our health for granted, our material comfort for granted, and be deeply unhappy. So despite material conditions and health that others would be envious of, we feel deeply unhappy. So this too we know either from experience or from observing in the world. And it's good to remind oneself of this again and again, to see the primacy of mind, the great importance of the mind in being able to reduce and even overcome hardships and difficulties in our life. And that our mind development of our mind will lead to us being able to eliminate our problems far more so than whatever outer material conditions we have.
And the names are done the same day, Jiki to Nuba Chimbo, and Duma Jong when the same get in the Duma Nuba Chimbo, Unguyo Baza, down the same year, so you die at the Kishigore. Just the same year, so you not the ones Jala Mas on the Bene, Jigan to Jala Lembaina. Yahada do any do a demo set and finishing door in the Trollar Shedi Papi Mayu. The Trolamajo to the Yawaresha to Rugor, to go, and Dinashi, Mother Sem Nali in a Sem the Yaga Chatan do it and Yungore. Just a semi do a dilatin and answer like Kangatigore. Sem Yaga dilatin and answer like Digi to go around like Diki Shanla Digi to Gore. Just a din in some. 当然就来dinner 来搞就是 sem 要多你的我吹起但的 sem 也还得 some 的 some 当过来是的嘛的吹起过来是那 sem 读个这个是那个有么别的的有么把对下空着俺家俺的马里巴是的就是 sem 读个的就是来 dinner 俺就来刚刚吹原来地里过来去了但就是怕有么就是搞起的读书的 some 当的搞 some 当过是呢 아니 점주체야다 안지고야 안지게 가소레 잠바다 제와다 안지게 다음에 발라서 바나 안지 추줌송야라서 쇠배냠내제야라서 전주좀야라서 디스냠내제고리에서 디스 제발 때는 제바이나 디스를 때는 라하나야 대와 샹래 디기주 라신 이가래 디기주비에게 삼로 디레스 진짜 라신 이가라 강한제에게 삼로디 아니 뇽모 베리티 라신니까라 강아지 라래 강아지 샹라 강아지고 디 먹어야 되지 디 매봐서 그래서 당연하죠 그 샘상보 잠바다 자와 인제 다네지 추줌로서 받아 쇠비냠나 쫀리냠 디소셈이 야후레스 디행하나도 다부자고 디 야게 땅 고레스 제가 디기 라래 디기 주비에 샹라 디기 되도 그래서 다 디니디 송고래 데리제 디디레 당도 데리제 고래야 돼
From those illustrations, I hope it's clear the great importance of mental development, because it's through developing our mind that we can achieve great happiness, and through developing our mind, we can radically reduce all suffering and problems. Material development cannot do that, not in the way that the mind can, not to the extent that the mind can. And generally in the world, if you're faced between a choice between two things, and either we can obtain, it's entirely up to us, and on reflection we see one is of great benefit, and the other will merely suffice, it is clear which we'll choose. Especially if we've thought well and we recognize that the one that will be of great benefit will be not of only great benefit to me, but also to others. Readily we'll take that one and ignore the other. And that is how it is here. Recognizing that happiness and freedom from suffering comes through mental development, first and foremost. This is where we should put our energy. This is where we should put our focus, not on merely having an abundance of material needs fulfilled. So then, when we look at the title of the text, where it's saying spiritual instructions to practice in order to prepare for the time of death, the focus then is on preparing our mind, developing our mind. How is this done? So if we take the mind in general, we can divide it into a variety of minds of two classes. There are those that bring harm to us, and through their expression bring harm to others. And these are in brief called the afflictions, or disturbing emotions. So these afflicted minds are minds such as anger, attachment, jealousy, pride. Their mere arisal brings suffering to us. Their expression brings suffering to others. So these we need to identify and eradicate. The second part of our preparation is to do with the other class of minds, the wholesome minds. These we need to cultivate. So virtuous minds such as love, compassion, patience, ethics, wisdom, joyous perseverance, concentration, all of these, their mere arisal brings joy to us, brings peace and happiness to us. And their expression has a similar effect on others as well. So here we come to see the meaning of preparing for death. To look at our mind and to see which minds fall into the class of wholesome minds, and those we need to habituate ourselves to, cultivate, strengthen our familiarity with them. And the other class, those which are unwholesome, afflicted, which destroy our peace of mind and bring harm to others, these we need to weaken and eventually eradicate. This is how we prepare. This is our practice.
those general ma juye de tini ngode che da tini inza dan nyema ge jiglu gu lama chi lama khaga chi sun dan ba se lama chi yore jisan lama di ko zu gonglo che bu phe che ne ji ji de ane korong ge yaum chi le shu bare nga kawa shi wores ge shi se sa je de da kawa ro ni shi wores an ya ye je wa len du kawa lumba kawa je wa len go wores ya yaum chi le shu bare yaum chi ge ga ro song res ne joro so ko le ba do so bi lama chi so ko le ba do che an pen ni shi je ma je wa len du so ko le je wa len shos song bare jisan 가르선 라마 코롱기 제리 차상 제사원자 코롱리아 강하세요 말도 고딩 땡수여로 지상 가와시에레 겨와 가와레네 코롱기 직접바 나신 줍투에기 코롱 뉴버 주여바자 뉴버도 코롱기 제리 제 줍사와자 지상 강하 매바래 강하 매바자데 나 가와시고라 가와기와랭 고레서야지 내디나 베네 디로시로 베네 나지 링가 땅아 조도 사지 가와도네 야가 요레스 세 기슈바도 지버로 와디 미 오네 데니기 제산 소소기 데리 여바이나 제산 시야라 강아 스카요 말 아니 셈제 쳐가요 말 개월에 약불린 두고 그래 약부 용 거래 제산 데니 강아 가요 말 셈제 쳐가요 말로 베디나 지레 다다다다 야오름 치스다 달래 어데 다음 사슈데로 니 라마랭 아주 제요 야 잡아 말에 그 미야래
renowned Lama that many of us, myself and many others, have met. His name is Gendün Gyatso. And some years ago, he went to see His Holiness in Dharamsala to ask about where he should travel to. But the question was, of course, not about going somewhere for a holiday, somewhere beautiful. But he asked His Holiness, he said, this body is coming to the end of its time of use, time to take a new body. Where would be of greatest benefit for me to pass from this body? And where would be of greatest benefit for me to take rebirth? And His Holiness replied to this Lama, who wasn't ordained, was a lay Lama, you should go to Mongolia. It will be of greatest benefit for you to pass from this body there, as well as to take rebirth in Mongolia. And so he did that. And he was able to do that because he had prepared well throughout his life. And he had now gained a power and influence over his time of death. And he knew the time was now to pass. And so he followed His Holiness's advice. He went to Mongolia and he died there. And a few years later, his reincarnation was recognized, and his reincarnation now is his reincarnation is living in Mongolia.
굴롱케 굴롱 여바다 되니게 삼되 난 지간 저기 도시네 냠낸 지긴 세베 굴롱케 케바데 굴롱디야 개와 치마기 제리제다 야고야야 제리제 안다 경화도 대 님의 숨쉬가 링리야 안직 삼되 개와사데 니야 마음바나 개와 치마도 제리기 규자라데 다 디기 팽거다 디 다데는 경화도게도 고주고 경화도게 냠낸 지야디 아주 개와 치마기다 디나네 송샤바네 마음바 개와 치마도 제리 제고래 셈래 제리 제고래 세디 디 경화도게 다데 라레 모서 대고로 와다
Whilst this Lama certainly is aspirational in terms of what he has achieved with his life, the honest truth is, all of you here have embarked on that same journey already, that same journey of preparation. In that, you saw that this retreat was being offered, you saw the subject matter was called Spiritual Instructions to Practice in Order to Prepare for the Time of Death. And you decided to come here and then did so with the motivation to learn about how to practice, how to train your mind in order to prepare for death and your next life. So that motivation, that decision was already starting you on this journey of preparation. And the goal is to achieve something quite extraordinary. And you have already started on that journey.
차세와 셀라마 그런 게다디 마 담가디 마송예리알 소소게 라마 제르미 첼리아 차세와데 차고래.
Now we can turn to the text, to the first verse, and as is usual, the first verse is an offering of homage or prostration to the author's spiritual teacher, to the author's own Lama. And in this case, we see it's Lama Tsongkhapa.
That is it. 应让行动变安心呢，故这样那有最最的，心上面即着恰在吧，帕罗上这边写了句子。
The first verse, from the power of the state of emptiness, the natural expanse, your bodies appear everywhere through your supernormal display, simultaneously throughout the countless realms of the universe. I bow at your feet, Father Lobsang Dorje.
那这里啊。 가르 송거스는 고 로산 제르미시기 안에 저 구송 투송기 연된 바데네데 여러서 연된 죄지안에 자체화래시네.
The meaning in brief of this verse is that Gendün Gyatso, the second Dalai Lama, is offering homage or prostration to the qualities of his Lama's body, speech and mind, his Lama being Je Rinpoche or Lama Tsongkhapa.
那应让心大别个东边昂些呢，是对应些的东北人是，让心有东北人的是个人，就是让心有这边东北人，但昂是东北人了，这些都两百下些边昂也是第几年呢？个要是呢，三千以来判断这边有七度，估计人那边做出去是的，估安呢这边滚，那把咱们的断过来起来。
The first line, the power of this, from the power of the state of emptiness, the natural expanse. So here, the state, the natural expanse. This too refers to emptiness, which pervades all phenomena.
那应让心东北人写的，但东北人的自己的两百下心边安呢，但两百下心边安呢，两百地来马上话去。 고 자마라 안에 지게 semche 감나 매바도 튠비게 안에 구이 남바 된제 주바 된거 레시레 와다 언제 지금 당보는 2번이데.
And looking at the first two lines together, from the power of the state of emptiness, the natural expanse, your bodies appear everywhere through your supernormal display. What this then means is that Lama Tsongkhapa is the Lama who's being praised here. His bodies emanate and appear throughout the worlds in ways directly to be of greatest benefit to others. He appears in ways precisely in accordance with the varying dispositions and inclinations of beings, appearing in forms or in bodies to which beings can relate to and interact with and be benefited by.
신자면 직접 capture 봐서도 das 주변 세계 사제 가와 가와이로선 사제들의 신장매 발에서 장매 봐 장매 봐 네 지금도 점블이다 점블이셔다 데네길에 아직 계합직ले 점블이딜에네 계합다마라 가가여도 봐 계합직나래 나데 다마라 여도 디나신다 데네 장매 발파 주바 차사 뒤질래 직접도 주바 삼님이 제바 빠도매 봐전 뒤질래 주제 봐 주베데 근데 주베딩 안에 샬야 반디 신유동하세야 된 디기 주비알야 네 남된다 안에 반디 주고래지려.
Due to these inexpressible, incomprehensible qualities of Lama Tsongkhapa, he is able, as we see in the third line, to simultaneously appear in the most beneficial of form throughout the countless realms of the universe. We, of course, in this life are familiar with this one world, but we know there are many planets, there are many other worlds that we are not aware of. And these, because of the inexpressible qualities of Lama Tsongkhapa, he is able to appear in all of them simultaneously in the manner or the form that is of greatest benefit to individual beings.
지기 셴리아 셴유동아 세야데 디기주야게 장매부 주바 장매바데 다 주바디야 안행아저 할레이나 레이 넘버 되야다 밀리나 미 넘버 되야데 넘버 자마턴 주바 데니기 뜀비기 뉴바 예겐 다 라마 팔로산타바세데 로산타바디리아 안에지 류가 유스미고네 안에 자세기 인식오래.
The author is prostrating to the qualities of his Lama Tsongkhapa, to his qualities of body, speech, and mind. And because of these qualities he is able to emanate in the most suitable form throughout the universe, throughout all the different worlds, whether it's a human or a god or another kind of unseen being, always with the motivation to be of greatest benefit to beings.
지사델이야 팔로산타바스 지데 팔라비데 남긴가저 파게시나 팔라네 지수 소식 팔라딜라 팔라거와 지사 제르무치데 교계주지게 팔라 마르와.
This term father, of course it has the usual meaning of being father, but Lama Tsongkhapa was not the father of Gendün Gyatso.
네, 데라 팔로산타바스데 팔로산다 발라야디 김제를 가르려는 팔라고야디 아주 부게리아 아나 아메기 코바나 조나리아 파기 서번시 따부고로와 서번 따발에 되네 싱을 마서나 싱딜이야 안에 지게 서번지 파기 파 서번 따 안델에 되네 안에 가서 아메기 조나리아 부디체 대살롱제 마트엔제 내가 저기 진디토네 아니 게네 디토리아 가 저기 셴레 디기주야레 셴레 강아세야 랑 저기 디니체디 부게디 파기파 지사번제 답 디답발에 되네 아니 그 부디 기고로와 어디나시 팔로산 잡아세디 제자 네 제르무치기 주바다 아마라 된제 안소리야 지게 디기주야다 동아세기 사본 마선 마 람든 제제가줄이야 개화사주 진에 개화사 냠는 제기 파 탑된도 니가서 냠는 제네 야네 냠는 제야 공부도 줘발에 되네 가서 탈바다 탐지킨 벽고 톱투고 그래서 근데 지 세치마 개화 있는 밀류 약보시다 회류 개화 약보 용투야 데레 개바도 파바 안 탈벽고 톱투야 데레 개바도 파바 안 상여고 톱투야기 사본 마선나 네 상이 로산다베기 가서 파 람든 제제 가서 귤라 아니 되니게 개위 사본 샤고레스 제사디 사본디기 리버 공부도 야 공부도 땅제 탈바트 탐지기 벽고 톱투고 데자 파세 파당 자와 파기 메잉알라 안 사본 파답제 되니 부기와 나신 안 팔로산다베 가서 귤라 개위 사본 답제 안에 답제 개와디 아니 리버 공부도 되지 탈바트 탐지기 벽고 토바지고래 디인자 파 세네 파단 자와 사디스 데 파세디 라고에 민디 도시네 송바레 팔로산타베 샤블라디세.
someone who is called a father is usually called a father because when they slept with the mother of the child, they implanted the seed that would lead to fertilization and a child being conceived and growing. So that is the role of most who are called fathers. So of course that's not the role of Lama Tsongkhapa, but the analogy is useful. Because in Je Rinpoche, his emanations throughout the worlds, they appear in the way that is perfectly in accordance with a wide variety of complexities of karmic backgrounds of beings and their own individual spiritual dispositions. And because he's able to do so, he's able to guide beings perfectly in accordance with their own specific personalities and guide them to accumulate virtue. Virtue which is indispensable to ensure fortunate rebirths, life after life, and a continuous progression leading towards liberation from suffering and enlightenment. So that is the role that Je Rinpoche's emanations play in this world. And he's likened to a father because like a father who implants the seed of a child in a mother, Je Rinpoche, through his emanations and his guidance, implants the seeds of virtue on our own continuum. In other words, through his guidance, we cultivate the roots of virtue, we cultivate the seeds of virtue on our own continuum. And therefore is likened to a father, because just like a father plants the seed of a child, Lama Tsongkhapa or Lobsang Dorje plants the seeds of virtue in our continuum.
Dongpe nga xin ne se de ing rang xin ing se de dongpa ni rang xin de pe dongpa se dongpa ni se de da di nga ju di to pe ki khenpa de la dongpa ni to pe lo se de da di ye chen bo ra chi ye che sho chi cha go ba di za de ya je rum chi du se ne king go re se de ngo ba chi ba na xin da nga ju ge rang xin dongpa ni se de kan chi la go lam na da nga ju ya chi za tian de se de nga ju ge 강라야 마도 랑외네 drup 되게지 drubi게 동바들라 다들 라신이 동바세어다 인세다 디레 라신이 동바세야 디레 강라야 마도 바 랑기 뇌네 drup 되바지 매바들라 동바세어래 라신이 동바세.
Let's look at the first line again. From the power of the state of emptiness, the natural expanse. This, as I mentioned earlier, refers to emptiness. And Je Rinpoche Lama Tsongkhapa has perfectly, without any flaw at all, realized emptiness. And this is an incredibly important topic, an incredibly important realization for us to, one, understand, and two, develop towards or progress towards. So for practitioners at our level, the way to approach this is, first of all, what is the meaning of emptiness? What does it mean for phenomena to be empty? It means that phenomena do not exist in the way they appear to us. They are empty of existing in the way they appear to us. They appear as if they exist by way of their own nature or essence, but they are empty of existing by way of their own nature or essence. So the meaning of emptiness is that phenomena are empty of existing in the way they appear. And how do they appear? To exist by way of their own nature or essence.
Di nangsu de dema drupa nangsu tsikore. Nang, di nangwa na jin yore samde, dini yore sambe zimba dila denzin la gore che. Jisa gangla ya ma do rang ngoni drupa nang yu di nangwa na rang ngoni drupa chi yore sambe samlo di nganzu ge la yung gore. Jisa nganzu ha mogo ma do dini yore sambe samlo da nganzu ge la yore. Di samlo di denzin re. 지상 아주 녀모 되차오 콩도 ngaje 용야 차상 될레된 용고래제 디 짜와디 디레 녀모 뭐지 그 짜와디 디레 지상 디 로로셰 된지 마릭바세 디레제
Talk about this further. I'll just quote one line from the final verse on this page. Whatever object arises as appearance to consciousness. So in other words, everything that we see or hear and so forth, or even think about, whatever object it is that appears to consciousness, whatever object of thought, it appears to be truly existent. And which means that it appears as if it exists in the way that it appears. The appearance is true or real. The appearance is how it exists. The way it appears is how it exists. And that is how all phenomena appear to us. So the meaning again, in case that wasn't clear, of phenomena appearing as truly existent is that the way they appear seems to be how they exist, as true. But they do not exist in this way. They do not exist in the way they appear, which is as if they are established by way of their own essence or nature or characteristics. So this is what is the appearance. Whatever object arises as appearance to consciousness, another consciousness grasps at the object as existing in the way that it appears. And this is true grasping. So the object appears as truly existent to consciousness, another consciousness grasps or apprehends it as existing in the way that it appears. This is true grasping. And this consciousness is not in accordance with reality, so it's an ignorance of true grasping. And this ignorance of true grasping is the root cause of all our afflictions, of all our suffering. It's from this ignorance that all our other unwholesome consciousnesses, our afflictions such as anger and attachment, jealousy and pride, they all come. So this then is a further explanation of how phenomena appear to us.
that to the kala kala rang when the nawa na shinji dondala denis yore besene deni yo maresha chiza nawa na kala ma to rang when the nawa na shinji when you so denis yore besene 그냥 아주 신노지 주나요 신도 비 신도 는 안sol에 나도 가라에 마도 랑문이 주베 난고래 우연히술라 신도디 가라에 마도 랑문이 주바리 베스네 말해세 당아서 디바서 디딩아서 직미 소소면 현다디기 파 로봇디게 통연의 가라 수다요디 가라에 마도 코롱 문이 줍디버시 난고래 안sol에 나와나신 안주기 토미디 된나와나 가라에 랑문이 주바리 베스 요르 베스네 요 말해제 지금 해반자다 나와 나시 랑원의 마주바델라 동바 인세월다데 라신 인세 라신 동바 인세 되는시려고 그러니까 나도 되는 아주 로봇이 파스터니까 즉 나원의 칼라에 마도 랑원의 주바 능고래 나와 나시 원인이슬 되는 시어베스는 요말에 매바자 칼라마도 랑원의 주베 동바래 동바 동상 많이 받지리다 랑원의 마주바데 동바데 내가 민가라서 인 라신 동바 인세데 되는시려고 그러지.
So just to recap and then give some illustrations. Every object of thought, whatever it is we think about, appears as if it exists by way of its own essence, nature, or characteristic. And then we have another consciousness that grasps at it as existing in this way. So this appearance we call true existence, because it is as if how phenomena appear is how they exist, so therefore true. And the grasping is called grasping at true existence. And it's not in accordance with reality, so it's an ignorance of true grasping. And despite all objects arising as appearance to consciousness, appearing as if they are truly existent, none exist in this way. Not a single object exists in this way. Whatever one thinks about appears in this way, and none has ever or ever will exist in this way. If you take, for example, a tree. So if you call to mind a tree, perhaps one in your garden, so it's only an object of thought, or if you look at one outside the window, it appears to your mental consciousness via your visual sense consciousness. That tree appears as if there's some tree-ness to it, an essence, an entity, a nature that makes it a tree. But it does not exist in this way. It is empty of existing this way. So too, if you call to mind a friend, a loved one, now that person appears to you. They too, like all objects, arise as appearance to consciousness, appearing as if they exist by way of their own nature or essence, that there is something about that person that makes them who they are, some nature or some essence. But they are empty of existing in that way. And that is the meaning of the state of emptiness, the natural expanse, or to perhaps express it more clearly, the expanse of being naturally empty. The expanse of being naturally empty. There's nothing, there's no inherent nature or essence that any object exists by. There's an expansive understanding that all phenomena are empty in this way.
Maybe Gimsan Gare said that. Chilida, Gala, Mateba wrong in the Dubade, Homari. Maybe Gimsa Garasene, Shingdon di, Nasnaya Shingdon di, Shenchilla Dugo, Yuta came Mambushilla Dugores, Dun Dugores. Jaza Benetambo Shingdon di, Mas Sabanchilla Du, Sabandia, Nis Delia, Mat Geseke, Sajigore, Sala Dugore, this Sabon Dugore, Delia, and you dread on. 추다 되는 차상 뛰는 거야 철철차 한도시네 저기 제사 추 매다 롱다 차상을 파 뛰些현실을对유단见现了对呢或如果的行动主把人嘛都行动的刚来嘛对把些可能我呢主对把就要嘛的是但我说那样的现实了对呢能够嘛的刚来嘛对把这人能够嘛的是就在今天上我说那样心地강라야마도 랑원의 주방 규단 见现实对呢主把的是对呢主呢有主过的是个这呀穷心嘛是呀穷穷的切有主过的是就像我说嘞那往哪心刚来嘛对把랑원의主把哪心没有嘛的没比今这个규단见什么忙不了对呢主过多啊说的
So I've stated then several times that phenomena appear to be truly existent. They appear to exist by way of their nature or essence. And I've also said, but they are empty of existing in the way they appear. So why is that? So phenomena appear as if they are, to express it in a different way, self-existent, existing from their own side. But when we investigate, this is not how they exist. They don't exist from their own side or nature or essence. They depend on causes, and not self-existent. They depend on something other than the self, on causes, and causes that require themselves many conditions. So if we take the tree, it may appear as if it exists by its own nature, being self-existent, but it's actually dependent on a seed and the right kind of soil, warmth and moisture and so forth. It's dependent. And so too with all phenomena, they appear to us, they appear to consciousness as being self-existent, but they are all, without exception, dependent. And for example, with this tree, and most phenomena, dependent on causes, conditions.
do some go on to go do sin. She was not the Yudu, but she didn't go. Then also now on Shinjing as Dongus in the Shego now the Yoribelana. She was not the Yomar, she was the Panang Yuna, and she was pie chick pie to Muni Cha and the Benedict, we don't do this and to Hashiomara. And the Chilo de Yorbes and the Shego Chilo de Yorbes. She was now a manner, Chilo de Yorbes. shewa chilo de menada shewa da migi barada lyorbes yani migdi nalo lyorbes ka yores pa chimchi ngaza tu nang odo kala 동기 중인데 셰고 나한테로 여바로지 능고래 폐기두 나서 삼나 폐기두 선고래 이내 아주 나와 나신지 폐기 여러베스네 나와 나신지 파 가두스네 셰고 나로되네 셰고 파 십십세제 자는 제베네 예 요마 요마레스 진짜 나와 나신지 요마 그래서 셰고 대당 아주 미기 니니가 왜다 니니가 긴 망부질로 초발에 때네 중인데 셰고가 중인 셰고를 마도 고 강라에 마되바 셰고 나데래 예되바지 나도 나와 나신지 요 말했어. 대딩아 저기 세우로 시간자 하고 돼야 책으로 와. 제사 강라에 마되바 쟁한도 중인디 셰고 나를 여르베스는 요 말했어. 나와 나도 이거도 강라에 마되 그런 분이 예되바지 능기도 와. 이난 비 강라에 마되바 그런 비나를 열어서 요 말했어. 아니 가르치래 가능스 요래라네 긴 망고질에 되些셰고다 셰고게 아니 잡로게 디다 아니 지 외다 되네 차상 초발에 되네 아니 진 중인지 셰고를 마도 아니 강라에 마되바 중인디 요 말했어. 아니 베디나시레서 완전 그 동반이 있어야 돼.
Further illustration is to take a reflection in a mirror. So if we hold up a mirror before ourselves, we see our face. And it appears that that is our face. That is my face. No doubt about it. It appears as my face. And what this means is that it appears to be self-existent. That is my face, existing by way of its own nature. But if we look for our face, we cannot find it in the mirror, and we can't find it somewhere in between either. It does not exist in the way that it appears. But yet, we grasp at it as being, this is my face, existing in the way that it appears from its own side. But when you think about it, it's very clear. This is a reflection that has come about in dependence on causes. The mirror is required, lighting is required, the positioning of our body is required. Only when those come together can there be a reflection of our face in the mirror.
최근에 규단긴 현실을 되는 주거래. 지상한서 동아영화 되게 규단긴 현실을 되는 주거래. 디기영화에서 규단긴 현실을 되는 용거래. 지상당한 주기 디기영화 규단긴 되게 파 규디게 쌓여봐나 내려되는 디기디기 되나요? 두야 차거래. 지상다 동아영화의 긴 규단 변에 규단긴데 매워서 봐나 동아영화요 말해. 다디 인자 주기 제자 마주에 탈바다 탐지기며 산요고바 그디나 깨와치마 약고야도 쇠투여요. 그래서 아주 규단 깨진 아주 그 제시 제반나 제자 규단 깨인데 제시반 될라딘데 되게 용거리 세대 된다라 디레다 아주
But phenomena do not exist in the way they appear relate to all phenomena. And that phenomena are dependent on causes and conditions. Doesn't only relate to trees and faces. The happiness we long for, the suffering we want to be freed from, both of these come about in dependence on causes. And this is good to be clear in, because if happiness comes about in dependence on causes, that means we can, by focusing on those causes, attain happiness. And by eliminating the causes that lead to suffering, we can gain freedom from suffering. So this is something not just to merely intellectually understand, but to really recognize. Because this then gives us the confidence, the strength of mind, that we can prepare for death and future lives by using what remains of this life well, by focusing our mind on ensuring that it stays virtuous and thereby accumulates the causes for happiness and turns away from the afflictions, the causes that lead to suffering. In this way, we can prepare well.
잠재 삼다이들이지 변행한도 코너사이드 현실에 되네 현실에 되네 그 코너사이드 다가 코너사이드 가요 말아 즉 안에 현실에 되지 양 지금 미녀바 되어다 야직 미를 통하다 야지 현실에 되제 마음으로 공을 내용 거와 지상한도 공을 뒤매봐서야 돼 현실에 되는 거 매봐서 두고 그래 지상 공을 써야 돼 깨와나 코랑 공원에 줍투버 랑공원에 줍되바지나 코랑 랑공원에 줍되바는 유다 깨 간라 맞되바지 코랑 원에 줍되바지나 거 매봐서요 말이지 지상 다 거기에디 현실에 되는 기고 현실에 되는 두고 봐자 그 매봐서야 돼 현실에 되는 거 매봐서 두고 그래 지래 다는 공을 매봐서야 돼. 근데 간스 좀 매봐서 그래라나. 그런데 잠재 잠바도 제가 삼라 공부이나 니기 공을 매봐서 그래지. 공을 아니 기여반에 잠재 삼다는 공을 매봐서 추천다. 근데 잠재 공부이나 공을 기여를 원고 차고 그래지. 현재 미지 지금 잠재 삼다에나 공을 기여를 원고 차고 공을 기 말해지.
Take a very practical illustration. So if we take an object such as the consciousness anger, so if we think about anger, that's an object, it appears to consciousness. It also, being an object, will appear to be truly existent. But anger, we know from our experience, doesn't exist by way of its own essence or nature. It comes about in dependence on causes. We hear something unwanted. We meet someone unwanted. We don't get what we want. All of these serve as causes for anger to arise. If anger did exist by way of its own nature or essence, that would mean it would not be dependent. And not only would someone be, perhaps ourselves, be an angry person, we would always be angry. We could never not be, because existing by way of its own essence, being self-existent, it couldn't be impacted by causes, because it would be independent. Being independent, existing by way of its own essence or nature, causes, such as someone showing us kindness, someone helping us, would have no impact on our anger. Our anger would always be manifest. Whereas we can intellectually readily recognize that anger comes about in dependence on causes, which means it can be eliminated. It doesn't need to be something that we are habituated to, something that needs to arise within us readily. It can be eradicated. And the way to eradicate it is to develop its antidote. So in times when the mind is not angry, we develop love and compassion. Love and compassion, being consciousnesses, come about in dependence on causes. So through cultivating, through reasoning and meditation, love and compassion, becoming a more compassionate and loving person. When one then encounters the causes that would otherwise lead to anger arising, due to the strength of our cultivated love and compassion, we won't get angry. Those same triggers that got us so many times in the past, now because we have cultivated love and compassion well within us, cultivated those causes well, those same triggers have no impact on us at all. And this is because consciousnesses such as anger, love and compassion do not exist by way of their own essence or nature, but come about in dependence on causes. By strengthening one set of causes, eradicating another, we transform ourselves.
미생기 콘로디에는 마시 시투고래 지자 랑교 콘로시야다 생교 콘로시야디 잠제스는 줍투고래 배나 미가도 미지님도 투보라 개베나 파조디오 콘로데 안제 파 콘로데 바이나 콘로디 슈체셔야마도 시해가야 말에 지자다 수 콘로데 바이나 델야 고 잠제 삼다 홀 콘로 말라마제 잠제 삼다 바이나 아니 소소리아 콘로랑고 말에 주스 잠제도 콘로 가고 가래 콘로랑고 말에 콘로 말라바이나 안주 잠지기 뉴베티 파조 콘로제 길리시 마시루 거래 제제 시투 거래 제자 디네자 안주게 콘로 수 콘로잖아 파 콘로잖아 디기 슈처 조지야네 가sam질이야 라신 편진이가 뇌마도 용거 말이지래 제자다 잠제 삼다바이나 잠제 공바이나 안 디기 랑기 콘로기야 원고 현유 콘로데야 시투 거래 해지래
When one is well habituated to love and compassion, having meditated well on love and compassion, our anger will not readily arise. Or if it even starts to stir inside, we feel a bit of frustration or annoyance. Because of our skill in meditation, we'll be quickly able to apply the antidotes of love and compassion and eliminate anger before it can arise. So it's clear that meditating on the antidotes to anger transforms our lives. Moreover, it has a direct impact on others too. Someone who's well versed in love and compassion, studied and meditated well on them. When someone reproaches them, scolds them, perhaps verbally abuses them, but because they are well trained, their mind will stay calm and gentle. And in a sincere way that the other person will be aware of, they will respond tenderly with care and kindness. Recognizing this, the angry person, their mind will slowly calm. They'll be soothed by this gentle, caring person before them. They will not be enraged further in their own flames of anger, fueled by an angry response. Rather, being before someone who recognizes their humanity and sincerely cares for them, their own torment will be eased.
지단 텔야 아닌 밤에기 안지게 동이 넘비네 배 야고에 안 계시던 인지버릇이 그 섬을 그 잠재라지 지도 안에 강음질이야 보디 무에 봐 잠샤제 되는 보디 게모셔야 차도야 돼 디스나 주게 무인이 소화서 냠녀여 봐 차디거로 봐 엔페나 디나시 땅아도 디와바 직바로도 키지기 그디나 키지기 강솔리 빼직 앞제 빠 소자가 직 강아테베네 땅아도 키딩알 빼 두제 지기도 섬제 아니 나즈이나 코로나제 콜리아 도르 슈제 주베이나 아니 게디나 키디기 전부 자기네 말 게디나 통도네 아니 간섬질레 미마통나 미딩 깨고요도네 키디가 깨자용을 디디 간저 냠녀로 당하죠 디요 안델야 키디파 코로나 인제다 키딩알라 가면 코로나샤 섬 인제 섬제 그 기후요 말에 섬제 인제 섬제 소수게 봐 두자자 콜리아직 직팜 레말로바제 안소수기 년바로던 호연가여 가스로 제르나 두스테게 탑시에제나 제베네 가슴질레 직선이제 네 가슴질레 미통요네 지게 맞아제 곧 주구디파 여제 가랑아제네 미통요네 수응한줄이야 전부실래요 자고 지사 되네서 디네 조고 차도고 지사디 소수기 코로나바네 게디나 전부 채투야 뭐 고조고 차투야 말 소수기 바 잠바다 제와 제장 코로나 가야기디 칼라다 디제요도 디 긴기 지내고 지게 안줄이야 전부 차 조고 차되네 게디나 안주 통화되네 슈구디 파 유제 안줄이야 눈리야 처음디 요한테 차디 딩안 주게 냠녀 되네 오수 안주 세비 통투야 디 차고로 봐 제가 디네에서 잠제기 뉴벌에 때네 랑기 콩로 가야다 현지 콩로 시에디 뉴버틴 시어래 제가 디네에서 당아서 그래서 먼저 냠내 제고야 돼 제가 콩투기 년보 대금 대야 돼 잠제 삼동아 돼 계신벌에 사실 도시고를
Other illustrations that I'm sure you all have experience with is if you take a child. Children tend to get very upset very easily, and often over things from our perspective that have no great importance. And if a child is maybe having a tantrum or wailing over something, the child will respond very differently to a caregiver who gets angry and frustrated at the wailing child, as opposed to a caregiver who's gentle and tender. If the caregiver is gentle and tender, they will have the mental space to perhaps distract the child with play, and in no time, the child will have forgotten this great torment of a moment before, and now will be laughing. But if the caregiver, they themselves fall under the sway of anger, that situation will just get worse. And another illustration is, if one perhaps on one's a route that one has to take every day, one walks a particular route, and if there is a very angry dog on that path, And every day when you walk past that dog, it comes bounding to the gate with great aggression and anger. If one responds with fear and one's own aggression, perhaps picking up a stone and threatening the dog, that dog may back away, but its anger will remain. And each and every day as you approach and it hears your steps, it will get aggressive. It will be fearful and get aggressive. Whereas on the other hand, if when the angry dog approaches, one just shows kindness, perhaps throws it a small treat. After a few days of passing the dog and responding with genuine kindness that it can sense, and perhaps giving it a small treat, the fear will subside and trust will grow. And it will start to approach one with a wagging tail, hoping for a treat. And soon will bound to the fence with joy, seeing a former threat now as a friend. So this transformation in the minds, the suffering minds of others, comes about independent on our own inner development. As we become sincerely more loving and compassionate and tender people, we will have an impact on all those who meet us. So from these illustrations you will have experience of, and you may well have experience of meeting people like that, who are generally calm and caring and interested in others, and feel the impact just being in their presence has, especially when one is tormented oneself. The summary then of these points that I've been making here is that all phenomena, everything that arises as appearance or consciousness, is a dependent arising. Everything is empty of existing in the way that it appears. And what's of great importance here is so too then is our desired happiness and the suffering that we want to be freed of. So through transforming our mind, we can become the person we long to be and gain freedom from all levels of pain and misery. Here we are continuing on our journey of accumulating virtue. And the greater virtue we accumulate, the stronger our virtuous, wholesome ways of thinking, the easier our experiences will be throughout this and future lives. We will attain good rebirth after good rebirth with good conditions, and our progression towards attaining a state liberated from samsara, liberated from suffering, will come ever nearer. So thank you. We'll conclude here for this morning.